The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our discussion on sales categories and related topics in Design Manager. My name is Brad, and I'll be hosting the demonstration. If you have questions during the webinar, feel free to enter them into the questions pane on your GoToWebinar panel. If the question is outside of the scope of today's discussion, please email them to support@designmanager.com. Lastly, if you missed a portion of our webinar or want to review any of our past discussions, go to our YouTube channel at Design Manager Inc., Design Manager INC, and you can see any of our past webinars and tutorials and other topics like our Quick Start, Project Management and Accounting courses, and there's our weekly webinars. In this week's webinar, we'll be focusing on several interrelated concepts that all ultimately contribute on how you can configure Design Manager to properly record revenue and cost of goods sold for the various goods and services that you purchase from your vendor and sell to your clients. Primarily, we'll be focusing on the topics of component types, company default accounts, and sales categories. Now, these topics we'll be covering ultimately can affect how your accounting activity is recorded on your financial statements, particularly the income statement. Therefore, you should always consult your accounting professional prior to implementing any alterations if you're unsure of the consequences of making these changes, just to be sure you're on the same page. Let's first discuss the concept of component types within Design Manager. Component types allow you to classify the goods or services you purchase from your vendors. Design Manager comes configured with 6 different component types, and they're defined on the Company Advanced Options window, General tab, which you access by going to your File, Company Information and Settings. On your Company Information window, click the Advanced button, and then go to the General tab on your Company Advanced Options. Now, here's how we can define our types. And notice that merchandise and time are both disabled. These must stay. The others are fully customizable. Well, why would one want to change these? Well, any genre of good or service that you want tracked separately can be its own component type. However, for purchases that have a different tax structure, each should definitely be a separate component type. What do I mean by tax structure? Well, simply whether or not a good or service is taxed or not. Let's take a look at one of our sales tax codes as an example. Let's use Pennsylvania. Now notice, in this example, in Pennsylvania, we can see that design fee and time services are not taxable. So they would have to be different component types so I can distinguish them from other types such as installation or labor. Maybe there's a differing tax rate. Many areas, New York City in particular, may have one percentage on merchandise and another one on design services. So those, again, would have to be separate component types. Other areas in the country have differing viewpoints of what is considered a good or service. For example, some areas consider delivery or shipping a separate concept from freight. And they may be taxable at different rates, or one may be taxed and the other might not be. Or you may simply want to track delivery versus freight. All of these sales tax code concepts we discover in detail in our webinar, Setting Up Sales Tax Codes, which again you can see on our YouTube channel, Setting Up Sales Tax Codes. Other reasons you may want to change or customize your component types. Well, you may have no need for crating, for example, and you want to separate installation and labor, make a separate component type for each one. Absolutely can do so. You might just want to prefer the term shipping rather than freight. I can simply change the screen title and Design Manager will automatically update that title throughout the software. Many settings in Design Manager can be customized by component type. For example, you can see that we can price each of the component types differently. I may have a 30% markup on merchandise, but for all of my other component types, I may want to do a 10% markup. I may opt to include certain component types in our client deposit, etc. Even on our documents like our proposal, invoice, purchase order, etc., we can configure how we want these particular component types displayed. I could have all of our freight listed in the total of the document, or I could have it set beneath each of the items individually. I can even change the title for each of them just for those individual documents themselves on a company-wide basis, or even individually for each project. So these component types really offer a high degree of customization in Design Manager for the various goods and services that you're providing for your client. Okay, now component types can also be used to filter reports, so you can focus solely on a particular component type. For example, let's go to our project reports. We have a report called Freight Analysis, but it could be installation, labor, shipping, etc. And for those of you who have joined our webinar in our past, I always recommend once you find a report that's to your liking, simply click the Add to Favorites button and it'll put it on our favorites list, which I've done for several of the reports we'll be reviewing today. And we could run our freight analysis and say, hey, I want to focus just on components of the type installation or labor. And this report then breaks down all of the items that have that particular component type, and we're focusing on the estimated cost and price and the actual values as well. Other windows in Design Manager allow you to focus on component types. Mainly one such as the specification search window, which you access from the specifications window and click the spec search button. I may want to view all of my components for a particular component type or any other parameters they may want to apply as well. So I could say, show me all components of a particular type. And again, we'll use installation labor as an example. And there they all are. And notice that each of them being displayed are of the type installation and labor. So the component type can be used to classify components for tax and pricing, analysis, easy identification, etc. But most important to our discussion today is that the component type is the first determination of what revenue and cost of goods sold accounts are used upon invoicing your client and recording bills from your vendors respectively. Let's see how. Let's go back to our company information window. And we're going to focus on our sales and cost of goods sold accounts tab. These are the accounts, if we focus on the sales side, that will be used for each component type when we don't override the account further down the design process, which we'll discuss shortly. And we can see that each component type has an account. And our example is exactly how Design Manager comes pre-configured. And we can see that if I don't somehow override our component type or our account down the line in the design process, anything that I select as merchandise will have its revenue recorded into the 41900 furniture revenue account. And you can see the same for each of the other component types. Now, you may want to configure this differently, of course. Let's say you want a design fee to go into the same account as time, this professional services time account. You can absolutely do so just by making your changes here. This will allow both design fee and time to be in the same revenue account on the income statement, making it nice and concise, but we still want them separated conceptually at the component level for tax differences and the other reasons we just described. And just like we have for our revenue account, we have a set of default cost of goods sold accounts as well. And you can notice that by and large, each of them has a matching pair to the revenue account, which is quite common in having revenue and cost of goods sold accounts. Now, I mentioned the concept of overriding the account during the design process. Let's discuss in depth a little bit further of what I mean. And that brings us to our concept of the sales category. Now, sales categories are extremely important in Design Manager. They allow us to classify the goods and services that we're selling to the client at the item level versus the component level, and can be used to answer questions such as, how much profit did I make on furniture this year? Or what was my total cost on artwork for the Smith project? Design Manager comes pre-configured with a set of sales categories, but like most of our settings, you can fully customize the sales categories to mirror your particular business model. They're located under the Accounting tab, Lists and Glossaries, and there's our sales categories. And that's our pre-configured set that comes with Design Manager. And also, like component types, many reports utilize the sales categories as a grouping or filtering option. If we look at an example for project reports again, such as the profit analysis, I could run the profit analysis report for a given sales category range. I might want to see all of my items with a furniture sales category. And then notice, here's our sales category, and all of these items have that singular sales category. Very common throughout Design Managers, allowing you to sort, filter, or focus at the sales category level. And now let's describe how these really can be used to override the company's sales and costs of goods sold accounts for each individual item. Let's take a look at our artwork as an example. Very similar to our company window. We can see on our sales category, we have that set of sales or revenue and cost of goods sold accounts, just like we do on our company defaults for those types of accounts. And on the sales category, I can either select to always use the company default. Notice I have my freight set to company default, so these are disabled, meaning that they're going to use the values that are currently stored on the company window. But I could also manually set my accounts. So in the case of artwork, I don't want to use the 41,900 furniture revenue account, nor the 51,900 furniture cost of goods sold account. I want the revenue from invoicing the client to go into the 41,300 art account, and likewise I want the purchases for those types of components to go into the 51,300 art cost of goods sold account. A very handy feature is that company default. Let's say, for example, that my freight ever does change, or I have a shipping account I want to use. I don't need to then subsequently update all of my sales categories. I just need to make the change on the company, and they'll automatically be reflected in each of those sales categories. Very convenient if you ever do have an account change. Different sales categories can also relate to the same revenue or cost of goods sold account. For example, I may have sales categories not just for furniture, but I might want to break that down to sofas, chairs, dining tables, what have you. And they're all use the furniture revenue and cost of goods sold account, but I can use each sales category for further analysis. And I can determine the profitability of which different type of furniture that I'm selling by using that sales category designation. So how do you make a sales category? Very easy. Let's say I want a separate sales category for pillows rather than just using an accessories account. So all I have to do on my sales category glossary is click the add button and fill in the necessary information. How about we use a code of PILLO, and we'll call it pillows. Now for everything but merchandise, I may want to use the company settings, making my life very simple there. But for the merchandise itself, I want to have a unique account for the revenue and cost of goods sold for our pillows. So I could search, let's see, if I sort by account name, well, I clearly don't have any pillows accounts yet. So let's go ahead and make those as well. I could add an account. Let's say we use the 4 designation for revenue, which is the common accounting nomenclature. Put a unique number in there, and let's make this our Pillows revenue account. Just select our account type, and we're ready to go. I can use my OK add. I'll use the same number, just with a 5 to indicate the cost of goods sold designation. This will be Pillows as well, and that will be cost of goods sold. And now we can see my pair of revenue and cost of goods sold accounts for our Pillows. And we'll select the 41,110 for our revenue and the 51,110 for our cost of goods sold. So just like that, I created a nice designation to track my sales and purchases of pillow-related products, and I have accounts to also encapsulate that on the income statement as well. All right, so how do all of these concepts interrelate? Let's focus in and let's look at our income statement, and we can begin to see how they do. Our income statement I can access by going to our financial statements button, and we can see our variety of different income statements, but we'll focus on the monthly version, which again I've attached to my favorites menu. Let's print this. Notice I've intentionally left no activity on our income statement, so we can see how our various accounts get affected by a few transactions that we'll put through. Let's go over to our specifications for one of our products. And I've created 2 items for artwork. Let's take a look at our artwork for guest bedroom 1, and we can see that our cost is $1,000, our estimated price is $1,300, but most importantly, notice that I have not designated a sales category. It is upon the item window, item tab, that we set the sales category, and I've intentionally left this one blank. If I use my next arrow to get to item 31, this is our artwork for guest bedroom 2. My cost is $600, the price is $780, but I am using our artwork sales category designation. Now, let's see how invoicing our client for these 2 pieces of artwork affect our income statement, and all of our interrelated concepts will then become clear. We'll go to our accounting tab, client invoices. Let's go ahead and add one, put in our project code. There are our 2 pieces of artwork. I'll tag them both. Transaction description. These are totally optional for those of you who have seen our webinars in the past. I highly recommend them because this allows you to understand what you may have been entering in months or even years prior. And it could be something as simple as sales category example. And we're ready to go. Click our OK button. Hit our print post. I have my modern format selected. That's my favorite version of the invoice document. And we can see there's our artwork for guest bedroom 1 and 2. Close and accept. Great. Now, let's see how by posting that invoices, our income statement has now changed. Go back to our reports. And now I'm not showing any accounts with zeros just so we can focus in on what truly transpired. Keeping our focus on the sales and revenue area, notice $780 of revenue went to our art revenue account, yet $1,300 went to the furniture. Why? Well, if you remember, our 2 items, guest bedroom 1, that was the price of $1,300, and it had no sales category. So Design Manager then has to go back to the company information window and look at the default revenue account for merchandise, which is just furniture. So that's why we have our $1,300 listed under the furniture revenue account. But for our guest bedroom 2, we have $780 of revenue going into our artwork sales category, which is tied to our artwork revenue account. So we can see that activity under the art sales category. Now, the same applies to our cost of goods sold. Let's go ahead and again, if we look at our income statement, just like our revenue, I've got all of our cost of goods sold accounts as 0. But if we record our bill from the vendor for our artwork, which we can do under accounting, accounts payable frame, bills and invoices, add, let's put an invoice for a project PO. All right, there's our 2 pieces of artwork. $1,000 of cost for guest bedroom 1, $600 for guest bedroom 2. Invoice number, I'll just make one up here. Sales category example. Today's date is just fine for the invoice date. I'll use the same transaction description as the invoice number. Click OK, and we'll record our bill by posting. Now, what's the effect on our cost of goods sold of doing such? Back to our monthly income statement. And we can see again, my artwork has the $600 cost, while the furniture has the $1,000. So even though we're selling artwork, by not having a sales category, Design Manager has to go back to the designated furniture revenue and cost of goods sold account. We frequently receive questions in our technical support department as to why various revenue or cost of goods sold accounts don't have the expected activity, or all of the activity may be in furniture or something along those lines. And it's very commonly due to having the associated sales category or the absence of sales categories on the item. So how can we review all of that quickly to ensure that we have the right accounts created in our sales categories? Well, on our reports, under glossaries and listings, we have our sales categories listing report, which again, I've attached to my favorites. And if we take a look, just by printing out our sales category listing, we can very easily see all of our sales categories and their corresponding accounts. So we have accessories going into the accessories, COGS, and revenue, while using company defaults for all the others. Certain examples like freight as a sales category. If someone creates an item just for freight or shipping, they want it to, no matter what component type they use, to select the the freight, cost of goods sold, and revenue account, sort of forcing a default there. In nearly all of these cases, the sales should be some sort of revenue account, and the cost of goods sold as well, except in certain circumstances where perhaps your accounting professional may want to have a purchase classified as an expense account. I have one example under my reimbursable expenses. So in this case, we're using the 49,700 reimbursable expenses revenue account, but rather than go into a cost of goods sold account, we want the purchase or the recording of the expenses from the vendor to go into an expense account. That's perfectly acceptable and makes complete sense to your accountant and to yourself, hopefully. Really, if we look at our chart of accounts, any of the balance sheet accounts, such as your assets, as generally indicated by the 1 or the 10,000, your liabilities, which are in the 2s, and your equity accounts in the 3s, most of those would not be desirable to have in a sales category, as these are very specific accounts that do not have their activity cleared out on a yearly basis. Moreover, back on our company information window, other accounts, all of these accounts are highly specialized in Design Manager, and none of them should be used generally as a account in your sales category, revenue or cost of goods sold selection. If you have any questions, be sure to ask your accounting professional, or if you're creating a sales category and you're unsure of what account to make, you can always contact our technical support team for a little assistance there as well. What about the situations where I forgot or did not enter a sales category like we did on one of our artworks? That can be prevented as well. So back on our company information, advanced, general tab, we have an option for require sales category. This is going to force a user to enter one. In fact, that becomes that setting is automatic and it becomes experienced immediately. So if we go back to our project specification for the Carters and we edit item 30, if I try to save this item now, notice Design Manager forces me to enter a sales category before progressing. Once I do, I'm all set. So that at least forces the users to input some sales category, which then prevents the situation where we're going back to the company default sales and sales accounts and cost of goods sold accounts. Okay, and that brings us to our end of our discussion today, where I try to present several important concepts in Design Manager pertaining on how we want the purchase and resale of goods and services to be reflected on our financial statements, particularly the income statement. The component type is used to classify the purchase from the vendor, while the sales category further classifies the sale to the client. The combination of these, along with those company revenue and cost of goods sold account defaults, determine how we affect our revenue and cost of goods sold accounts in the future. And with that, I thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you join one of our free webinars in the near future. Thank you and have a great day.